Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast. On today's show, we have Monique Scott, who is running for Hillsborough County Court Judge. She is a local attorney. She's held a lot of different offices and positions in her time, both as an attorney and prior to, and she was nice enough to stop by today to kind of let us know a little bit about herself and talk about her campaign for county court judge. So, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Josh. I'm very good. How are you doing?
I'm excited to start the day with the podcast. You know, a lot of my colleagues now approach me in the hallways and ask me if I'm working anymore because of how many of these I'm doing. And the answer is yes, I'm working. I'm just working twice as hard. So, in any event, I'm not sure how I was first introduced to you or the concept of you running for county court judge. It was either Greg Green during his podcast or my brother-in-law, Derek Basiglio, had mentioned that you had reached out to him. He's a orthodontist up in Brandon, Plant City area, and I guess you're either live and or work out that way. Are you a Florida native or?
Yes. So my parents actually both came from Colombia
Okay.
in the early 80s. As everyone's aware of by now, the early 80s were pretty crazy in Colombia. And my mother comes from a family of 10 kids.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so big family. I know your wife comes from a big family
Yeah.
like that as well. Um, but in the early 80s, the family decided it was best for all three of the girls to move to the United States. So that's exactly what they did. Many of my uncles were in the military, and it was just determined to be unsafe for the family to continue staying in Bogota. So my mom got married at a very young age, and she moved to the state of Florida, Boynton Beach, where I was born with my father. And I was, well, you want me to continue?
Sure.
Okay. So,
We're here for you. We're here to hear about you today. So.
all right.
What?
So basically, that relationship was a really bad relationship.
Your parents you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
my biological father.
Can I just ask what was your maiden name?
Yeah. So maiden name was Garavito.
Garavito. How do you spell that?
Garavito.
Okay.
Yep. So that relationship was a pretty bad relationship. My biological father was emotionally, verbally, psychologically, and physically abusive.
How old were you at this time?
I
were
was
you old enough to comprehend, or were you still?
No, I mean I was an infant.
Okay.
And the abuse was going on before.
Now there's studies that I practice family law. And there's a lot of studies that say even infants, before they're even able to comprehend what's going on, can be impacted by such things in the household. So
Yeah.
I'd be interested to kind of hear more about that. But
Well,
anyways, this was mostly occurring prior to you.
yeah. Well, I mean I ended up having to grow up with him too.
Okay.
I'll get into that, but. So my mom was in a country where she didn't speak the language, was not familiar. She was very young, 22, and she was strong enough to realize that this was not the person she needed to raise a child with. So she divorced him at the age of 22 when I was still a newborn baby. However, she couldn't go back home, wasn't safe, and she's a single mom raising a newborn child. And luckily, she met my stepdad, and my stepdad's American. He's from the Tampa Bay area. He went to high school at Jefferson High School, and met him. They ended up getting married, but we went through the family court system, and my father was able to still, have his rights, rightly so, to visit his child once a month, and I had to continue visiting with him. However, I grew up as a child very much in fear of my biological father. One of the main fears that the family often worried about was me being kidnapped to Colombia.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was something that was one of those, things that kind of I think shapes you as an adult, and it probably made me a very strong, independent person because I grew up as a kid feeling very alone.
For sure. Now, you didn't have any siblings?
No, I have a sister with
Okay.
my mom, my stepdad, who I
Okay.
call my dad.
Okay.
So she's technically speaking, I guess, like a stepsister.
How old is she?
She's 30 now.
Okay.
So we're about 6 years apart. But she's my sister. I call my stepdad my dad. My dad, my stepdad raised me. He walked me down the aisle. Was at every graduation. Biological father, I terminated that relationship when I was 18. So,
You just terminated it on a personal level, or you
oh,
actually took
the
legal
day I
action?
turned,
Okay, when you became
the day I turned 18, called him up and I said, I don't want to talk. We're done.
kind of a tangent, but so in family law, one of the things that we often deal with when we're creating parenting plans for families where one or both of the parents are from another country is we look at whether or not the country of origin recognized the Hague Convention on Child Abduction, and I wonder if Colombia does or doesn't, because whenever we're writing up parenting plans, there's certain places like Haiti, some places in the Middle East, some places in Africa, like I don't know if it used to be called Myanmar. I don't even know what it's called anymore. But they don't recognize it. So if the kids go there, you're not getting them back. And so I wonder. I would think Colombia did, but anyways, apropos of nothing. But it just made me think of that when you were talking about that fear.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, it was definitely a concern that my mom had, and I remember many times just being around him and just being extremely afraid of him. I
Sure.
remember at one point he was yelling at me, and I was scared, and I jumped out of the car. The car wasn't moving, but I
Yeah.
jumped out of the car and I ran into a nearby hotel and hid in the bathroom.
Oh gosh.
And the maid was able to call the police and get me some help, and he left me there.
Well,
So
what a blessing though that your stepdad came in the
yeah,
picture and
no,
despite
absolutely,
all these travails, were able to have a healthy role model from a male
yes.
perspective.
And that's super important with you practicing in family law. And from what I've seen with my experience, which I'm sure we're going to get into, I think it's super important to have both a male and a female role model, or just, two parents.
Just to see what a loving relationship is, no
yeah,
matter what it looks like.
no matter
Yeah.
whether it's, because some people think, a boy needs a man in his life. Yes, that's true, but so it is a young female.
Oh, for sure.
So
I have a little girl and a little boy. So, and my relationship with both are very different, and I think the role I play in their psychology is very different. But I want to be an example of what my daughter should expect,
exactly.
whether it's from a man or a woman. I mean, whatever her path is, I think that you've got to show them that you're to be respected, that there's not a hierarchy in your parents, that
Right.
they're equals, and that anyway, getting off topic a little bit, but I think that's very important. So again, it's great that despite what you had to deal with early on, that you had that with both of them.
Yes.
Now, did you grow up in Tampa though? Or
I
did you grow up-
did. I
okay.
grew up.
Where did you go
I
to
was
school?
raised in town and country,
Okay.
and lived in the same house all the way from like the age of 4 to high school. That was when all the redistricting was going on. So I actually went to 2 different elementary schools. I went to Bellamy and Laurie Elementary, 3 middle schools, Roland Park, Blake when it was a middle school, and Webb Elementary or Webb Middle School. And then 2 high schools. I went to Jefferson High School, and then I went to Sickles High School.
Now, were you an athlete? Were you academic? Were you a artsy person? What was your
So
how would you characterize young Monique?
Yeah, I was a major tomboy.
Oh, really?
Oh yes. Back in what was that, like the late 80s, early 90s? It was You Want to Be Like Mike. Remember that commercial?
No, for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to be like Mike. Michael Jordan was my hero.
You play basketball?
Yeah,
You look like a point guard to me.
yeah, I'm pretty.
Yeah.
I'm short, but
You can scramble.
I can scramble. Yeah. So I like to play with the boys while the girls were inside playing Barbies. I was outside getting my knees scraped up and roughing it up with the boys playing basketball. I had baseball trading cards. I was a total tomboy. I even my husband likes to make fun of me. I had this one awful school photo where I cut my hair short.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really
I've got a
flattering.
couple of my wife that I like keep in my wallet or keep in like safe spaces. I always have leverage that I'm
Yep.
keeping somewhere.
He does the same. So yeah, I in high school I played tennis. I did swimming. Those are my two sports. But I was always very active. I was involved with the Key Club.
I remember the Key Club.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Key Club, student government. So I kept busy, and I think that's, I have a son now who's in high school, and that's
You
what,
have a son who's in high
I
school?
have a son who's in high
Oh
school.
my
He's
gosh.
14. Yeah,
Wow.
he's a freshman.
I kind of did the math in my head. You're around 36, 37?
I'll be 38 this May.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what about college? Where'd you go?
Oh, I stayed local again. Again, just growing up in my household, it was a very strict conservative household. Parents really didn't want me to go off by myself. I think they wanted to keep me very sheltered. But I was able to get into University of South Florida. It was the only college I applied to, and I was lucky enough to find a job. And that was really what allowed me to go off to college, because the parents were like, yeah, you got to do this on your own.
Did you go straight through 4 years?
I did my 4 years, got the Bright Future scholarships. That helped out a
wow.
lot. Yeah. I worked all through college.
What sort of work did you do?
I actually had 2 jobs. All through college, I had at least 2 jobs. I worked the first year on campus at the USF gym. I worked at the do you remember Fontana Hall?
I didn't go there.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah.
So it was like the dorm off campus that was like the nice dorm.
Okay.
And
My
when all
wife went
the
there, so she would know, and Derek
Yeah.
went there, he'd know. But
yeah, so it was I worked there as well as like an RA kind of.
Okay.
And then there was an apartment complex that opened up down the street, Breckenridge. Started working there, and then there was a like a New Tampa is close by, and a lot of the kids were moving from off campus to New Tampa apartment complexes, and ended up working at a like a water hole, Peabody's,
Okay.
and worked there as well. And then I did a little bit of personal training towards my later years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what did you get your degree in?
I majored in criminology and minored in psychology.
I think that was...
That was Greg, I think.
No, I did something very similar. I think it was criminology and not sociology. It was something else. I can't even remember. But so now, did I hear you were a police officer? You were in law enforcement at some point?
Yeah. So okay. In high school, I was we had like career day. And we had an FBI agent come in, and I was maybe like 16, 17. And I'm so thankful that he came in, because that's what really planted the seed to get into law enforcement. And the nice thing about that, too, is it kept me out of getting into trouble, because he came into that classroom and was like, yeah, you can't do any drugs, no smoking, no nothing. Great grades. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do, so I got to make sure I stay out of trouble. So definitely owe that man for the career path. In my mind, I was like, I'm going to go into law enforcement. I want to be like some sort of FBI special agent, U.S. Marshals, something. So yeah, as I was attending USF, that was the career path. I actually was going through the application process with the U.S. Marshals for a co-op. So basically, it was an internship that would turn into a job. We kind of skipped over this, but when I was 10 years old, I was diagnosed with epilepsy.
Oh, okay.
Epilepsy is a lifelong condition. Other than having seizures, you lead a pretty normal life. I've been pretty fortunate to have the epilepsy controlled with medication. Very tolerant. As long as I take the medication, everything's good. So never really had to deal with any sort of adversity regarding epilepsy until that point in my life, when I tried getting a job in law enforcement with the U.S. Marshals. And basically they were like, yeah, you passed all of the tests, you did the physicals, everything's good. But we're sorry to say, because of this disability, you're not going to qualify.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, the thing about me, people who know me well, they know that I'm pretty determined and ambitious, and I don't usually take no for an answer.
Right.
So that did not stop me. I ended up moving to D.C. I bought a one-way ticket, thinking I was going to make something work up there. I got a job with an internship actually with the Public Defender's Office as an investigator. And I was going to get out of Dodge and make a career and a life in D.C. So again, I bought a one-way ticket and did that internship. However, before leaving to D.C., I met my husband.
So were you in DC at all?
I did. I went to
I
DC.
love DC. Did
Yeah.
you like DC?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
I lived in Arlington.
Okay.
Loved the metro. Got around everywhere with the metro.
Okay.
It's a young town
Right.
where everybody is equally ambitious and
Yeah.
hungry.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I met
How
the
did you meet him?
man. Well, I met him at USF.
Okay.
So we were at. I was doing my undergrad, finishing up my undergrad. He was doing some prereqs for chiropractic school, and we met at the USF gym. And I mean, literally like a couple months before me leaving to DC. And he was nice enough to come and visit me in DC. And he was just really special. And I knew that I could tell right away I'm a pretty good judge of character. And I fell in love with him quick.
What's his name?
Justin Scott.
And he's a chiropractor.
He's a chiropractor,
okay.
yeah.
Is he a local guy or did
He's
he
a local guy. He grew up in Temple Terrace.
Okay.
Family's local as well. They grew up in Tampa.
What's the name of his business?
Strong Life Chiropractic.
Do they have multiple offices, just one? Or?
Just one office, yeah.
Where's that located?
Fishhawk. Yeah,
Right.
Fishhawk.
Shout out to, what's it called again?
Strong Life Chiropractic.
Strong Life Chiropractic out in Fishhawk. Right.
Yes,
Keep
yeah.
going.
Yeah, so we ended up getting together. We were doing long distance, obviously, for a little while, and while I was in DC, and decided to move back.
Yeah.
DC was really cold, and of course, I had fallen in love, so moved back, and was able to get a job with the as a scholarship cadet with the Tampa Police Department.
Okay.
So. Got that opportunity. There was 10 of us that got this opportunity to go through the academy, paid for by the Tampa Police Department. We also got a stipend, which was really nice. Those 10 individuals are now some of my best friends.
Are they all in the force or are they gone different
No,
directions?
some of them have gone different directions. The ones that are still here with the department, are doing amazing work with the city. They've advanced in their careers. Some of them are corporals, some of them are detectives. We've got one who's the Hispanic liaison for TPD and has started the Ambassador of Ambitions program, also affiliated with the Police Athletic League. So really, really great, just great people.
Just while I'm thinking of it, are you bilingual?
I'm not. I can get by.
Yeah.
But and that's kind of like another story
Sure.
of growing
Yeah,
up. But yeah, I can get by. But no, not bilingual. But yeah, so I went through the police academy, got sworn in, went through the holdover phase where they're teaching you the rules and procedures related specifically to Tampa Police Department. And was going through field training when the city, the contract with the general physician had expired, or they hired a new doctor or something. So my whole class had to go and get reevaluated medically for the pension. And when we did, this pension doctor, he did not want to sign off on me because of my epilepsy, despite the fact that I'd already been evaluated medically by 2 or 3 other doctors, and my neurologist had already signed off on it as well, because again, it was controlled. I hadn't had a seizure in years, and
it's just weird to me because it seems like an ADA issue. Like
it was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. It was. So this is 2006, okay?
Right.
So in 2006, the American Disabilities Act, the ADA, did not, unfortunately, include epilepsy as a disability. Now, in 2009, the American Disabilities Act was reformed to include that. So had it had happened 3 years earlier, I would have been covered, and any sort of accommodation, which really there was none for me specifically that needed to be had, but if the doctor had felt so uncomfortable, then an accommodation would have had to been made. But in this case, since it happened in 2006, I was not covered, and I was just out of luck.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, questionably, maybe not. I mean, look where you're at now.
Yes.
So maybe this was all part of the plan. So
I think so.
So when did the idea for law school enter your head?
So law school was always a plan.
Okay.
I just thought that I would do it later on in my career.
Okay.
So when that fell through, I was fortunate.
When the TPD fell
yeah,
through.
when
Okay.
TPD fell through, I was fortunate enough to have some people in my life who were teachers,
Okay.
and they were. One of them is an aunt who is a person who I look up to. I've had great teachers in my life as a student, and then I had another friend who was teaching as well, and so I decided to try teaching. I like kids. I like working with kids. And I've always had a passion for science and history. So I was like, if I could get in doing something like that, that would be great. So I started off teaching. I taught elementary school, started off teaching fourth and fifth grade, which I loved. Really great kids at Veterans Elementary and Sanders Elementary over in Pasco County. And then transitioned into middle school, taught middle school science, eighth grade and sixth grade. So
Oh,
I taught
wow.
for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Quite
did
a
that.
breadth of experience there. I mean,
Right.
a lot of different facets. So,
So one of my passions is, I guess some people call it idealistic or being naive, but we've got one life to live, and the way I view it is I want to make as much of an impact as I can.
right,
I want to make a difference, and I think that the way you can do that is to start locally.
right.
Um, and so that's always been my aspiration in life, is to help others and to make that difference. And I think the best way you can do that is by becoming a police officer, by becoming a teacher, by working as a prosecutor at the state attorney's office, because that gets you in touch with the community. You get some hands-on experience, like working with these citizens of our county.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's always been an interest of mine. So I transitioned from teaching, however, back into law, because that passion for the law remained inside of me. And I like I told you, I've always been the kind of person that I'm not really going to take no for an answer. If a door closes, I'm gonna find another way to get in.
I can feel that energy coming off. I can see that
Yeah.
about you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you hear it over the microphones, but you can sense it in person. Anyway, go ahead.
So, I had talked to a few family members, a few friends, and since law school was always in the back of my mind, but again, I was thinking later in life, started investigating that. Um, I had had a family at this point. My son was in like first or second grade. My husband had just started off with his own practice. So financially, we were kind of in a tight spot for me to just quit my job teaching. So I decided to go to law school part time. So was able to get into Stetson's part time program.
What year was this about?
This was 2009.
Okay.
Yeah, 2009. So got into Stetson's part time program. Went to school at night, taught during the day, and I loved every minute of it. I mean, my husband, even to this day, is like, I don't know how you did it, but I would come home every night excited and amped, just learning about the law, and even like what some people consider like boring topics like property and
Right.
Contracts. I loved it. Loved every minute
Well,
of
you're
it.
getting to use a muscle that you don't necessarily use in everyday life. That analysis and that logic and that. I'm actually writing a book right now with a business consultant on billable hours, and one of the big themes is how ill-equipped law schools are to teach you to run a business and run a practice. But the one thing with law school that I liked right away, like you're mentioning, is it conditioned you to really think, think in depth about nuances that normally, you just don't have to in life. Who am I going to vote for? What am I going to eat for dinner tonight? What car am I going to buy? These are the decisions that a
Right.
lot of people make. But when you're having to do issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, and read about all these different
Thinking.
things, I've got to imagine if you had an MRI done, you would see a part of the brain light up that you don't normally. So it definitely is appealing. I had that
Absolutely.
same experience as you. When did you graduate?
So I graduated Stetson's part-time program in 2012.
Okay.
Yes.
And so where did that lead you?
So from there, again, I wanted to be back involved with law enforcement in some capacity. I tried other areas just to make sure I wasn't, closing any doors that were, possibilities. Um, but again, that passion for law was there. I did a CLI, Certified Legal Internship, with Pasco County's State Attorney's Office and a CLI with Hillsborough County's State
Dade
Attorney's
City or
Office.
Newport Richie?
Dade City.
Okay, so was that like Sestack, and who were your judges out there at that time?
Oh man, I'm not gonna
It's been a
remember
minute.
their
It's
names.
fine.
Yeah, it was county court, so we were in front of a couple of different judges.
Right, right,
I
right.
was getting handed around to everybody
Sure.
to be used. But so I ended up taking a job with the state attorney's office in Hillsborough County. Started there in intake, and then
Oh God, I probably sent you some letters. Oof.
yeah,
Yeah. Glad you don't remember me. Go ahead.
nothing.
Nothing stands out.
Nothing. You were all right.
Yeah.
So did intake, did county court.
What judges were you in front of in county court?
County, I was in front of Leffler.
I love
Amazing.
Leffler.
Yes.
He's in family law now, so and his kids go to the same school as my daughter does. So he actually just carved my daughter's
The
pine
woodwork.
card derby. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he loves the woodwork. But anyway,
yeah.
Leffler's awesome. Go
He
ahead.
is. Judge Taylor.
Judge Taylor is actually, her podcast is coming out today.
Oh, great.
Yeah, she came in last Friday, and yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Who
good.
else?
Judge Farr, Scott Farr.
Scott Farr, I like him a lot too.
Yeah.
We always had a competition to see who could have the better beard, and
Okay.
I used to have him in a DVI court all the time, and
Yeah.
I loved him because he would actually like listen to legal arguments
Yes.
and not just be a pocket vote for issuing an injunction. He had the gumption to deny them when they were didn't have merit. So I always liked him for that.
Great judge. Judge McNeil and Judge Gabbard over in Plant City.
Art McNeil, Jennifer Gabbard.
Yep.
Gabbard's in
Former
family law
prosecutor
right now.
at a state
Yep,
attorney's
yep.
office. Last one to get appointed
Right.
from the state. Judge Weiss. I was in DV
Love
court
Judge
for a little
Weiss.
while.
I used to, when he was a general magistrate, I used to have cases in front of him. So yeah, he's great too.
Yeah. I think that's it for the county court
And then
judges.
felony, where'd you go?
And then, so from there, I did drug court and I did VOP court. So drug court was Pomponio.
Pomponio's in family law now.
Yeah, and then VOP court was Judge Perry.
Judge Perry's a force of nature.
Yes, he
Did you
is.
see the article that just came out about Nazaridan and the probation in his courtroom? It was all over social media yesterday.
No, I
You
haven't
should
seen
take
it
a
yet.
look at it. I'll
I'll
forward
look
to
for
you.
it. Yeah.
Everybody's been sending it to me. I was like,
Uh,
I like Judge Naz. I mean, I've been in front of him in criminal court and family law court, but if you've ever been in front of him, he took over for Perry,
right.
and he's just as colorful as Perry. I mean, there's a lot of editorial comments going on from the bench in there, so it's interesting.
Awesome. Yeah. So from there, then I was promoted to felony. I went to felony division C, and that was actually Judge Moody, Ashley Moody, who's now our Attorney General.
Attorney General, yeah.
Yeah. Practiced in front of her for 2 years, and
She'll sharpen your sword because she, nothing gets by her.
Oh,
And
yeah.
You got to be on your A game with her.
Oh,
I
she's
had her
super
in
sharp.
Family law, and again, it was like,
yeah,
you-
she's on it. She's
Yeah,
on her game for
yeah.
sure. Very pleasant person though. And then from there, went to felony division I, which was in front of Judge Laura Ward.
Never dealt with Judge Laura Ward.
She's fantastic.
Okay.
She's fantastic. So, yeah, and then obviously I've had plenty of trials working at the state. I mean, you're in trial every
Yeah.
other week, and you're usually prepping for multiple trials
At once,
to go
yeah.
at once.
Mhm.
So, I've had the opportunity to practice in front of Judge Sabella, Judge Sam Ward.
I love Sam Ward. She's another favorite of mine.
Yeah, no, she's great. Judge Holder, he's on
Sure,
the,
he lives-
he's getting
he
ready to
lives-
retire.
He lives down the street from Madge and I.
Okay.
We see him all the time.
Okay.
Which we were talking about Madge Masig a minute ago. If you know Judge Holder, you know Madge Masig. Politically, they occupy very different spaces, and they literally live like down the street from each other right now.
Great, loud personalities.
yeah.
And actually, Judge Holder was the one who swore me in. I actually interned for him when I was going through law school. So, very close to Judge Holder. Who else? Judge Battles, before he went to civil.
So you've had a lot of different
Yes.
judges to
Yes.
model
Yes.
yourself off of, or at least see what you feel works or doesn't work or that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to observe different judges expose different strategies, different temperaments, different styles in handling the docket, um, or manage the courtroom. So that sort of experience, I think, will aid me in deciding, how I want to rule from the bench. I know what works. I know what things can be improved upon.
Well, I'm gonna go through all that with you, and I
Yeah,
definitely want to hear about that. But I want to get to the impetus for running for judge.
sure.
When was that also always the plan, or was that something that kind of we kind of did a little bit of a leap there because you left the state and then went into the private sector, didn't you?
Right. So I just left.
Okay. When did you leave?
I left in January. I left January 3rd was my last day
2020.
of 2020.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you had been in the at the
Private.
Yeah, for a while, much longer than that.
No,
What's the name of the practice that you're at?
I'm at Frankie Law.
Okay.
So
And that's FRANCHI?
yes,
Okay.
correct. Frankie Law. Primarily personal injury, but we are doing family law as well and criminal defense.
Well, having a husband who's a chiropractor, I'm sure doesn't hurt doing personal injury.
It's going to be helpful.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, if you get judged, we do personal injury too. So
Okay.
send us some cases. But anyway, wow. So that's great. So when you left, did you have eyes on running for judge?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I sat down with Andrew Warren, the current state attorney, and told him, that this was my plan, and he was very receptive to it and supportive of it.
So you worked both under Mark Ober and
I
Andrew
did.
Warren.
I got
Oh, wow.
hired by Mark, who was fantastic as well, and was there, and then stayed through with Andrew, who has also done a great job. They both have different styles. Both, I think, have done and will continue to do a great job. But yeah, I mean, I sat down with Andrew and I told him that this was something I was wanting to do, and it was. I mean, the ball was already rolling.
Sure.
So he was supportive. I left January 3rd, which was a Friday, and then I filed on Monday,
Wow.
January 6th. I think
Now, is there groups for county court?
There are.
So what group are you running
It's
for?
group 7.
Okay.
But the thing is with that, I want to make sure your listeners know the groups, as far as voting, anybody who lives in Hillsborough County can vote regardless of the group.
Well, for sure, but it tells listeners who you're running against,
Right.
I guess. So,
Right.
and in this election, you have 3 people that you're running against.
Correct.
And who are they again?
So the opponents are Nancy Jacobs.
Now, Nancy Jacobs, I'm having a senior moment. I know Nancy Jacobs, but I'm trying to remember how I know Nancy Jacobs. What does she do?
I don't know her very well. I think
feel
she
like
practices in family, but I'm not
I think that
sure.
must be what it is, and I'm just, for whatever reason, I can't put a face with the name, but I know that name.
Yeah.
And then Rick Silverman.
Rick
you mentioned,
Silverman
who,
does traffic.
tons of traffic
yeah.
stuff. Who's like one of the first people to do the ticket clinic.
Right. I worked with him a little bit when I was in county misdemeanor.
Sure, well,
So
everybody had that.
So
And then is it
Rick,
Bill Yanger?
and then Bill Yanger.
Who I don't know. I've heard about. I don't know personally. Wow, 4 people.
Yep.
That's
4
interesting.
people. So
And 2 women, 2 men.
2 women, 2 men. So the way it's going to work, and your listeners will know this if they listen to the other podcasts with the other candidates from different elections, but the primaries are occurring August 18th. So the top 2 will then move on to the November to the general election.
And so this is your first time running, as you stated. You're the first person that's running for county court that I've had the opportunity. Well, Judge Taylor's up for re-election, so we kind of talked about that. But specifically, someone in your position, this is the first time running. How has that been? I mean, it seems like it's just a crazy amount of work, and you got to always be on. Have you found it to be that?
No, honestly, I'm enjoying it. I'm loving every minute of it.
People who love this stuff. You dig the.
I've always been involved with the community. Like I said, I've been involved with Key Club since I was 15.
Right.
So I had exposure to public service at a very young age. And I kept up with it. So, for me, this is all very natural. I mean, I'm on 4 different boards. I'm on the Sheriff's Hispanic Advisory Council. I'm on the Epilepsy Service Foundation board. I'm on the Tampa Hispanic board. I'm on the Hillsborough Association of Women Lawyers board. And those are just the boards that I serve on. I'm on a couple of different committees and involved with a couple of other organizations.
Do you do any charitable stuff?
Yes, of course. My family and I, we volunteer at the Humane Society and
Okay.
Metropolitan Ministries.
Okay.
So, like I said, and then, my son, what's great is now that he's in high school, he's got to get those community service hours so we can do it as a family and we have a good time. But no, I love it. And I think it's actually very important for judicial candidates, judges, any sort of public figure, because that's what you become once you start putting your name in for public leadership. You become a public figure, and I think it's important that we stay involved with the community, that we volunteer in the community, because that's what keeps you in touch with the community and gives you the pulse of the community. You don't want to isolate yourself. And
which I've kind of learned through my interviews is a problem with
yes,
judges,
yes.
because you go from a very collegial environment where you're dealing with other attorneys, dealing with all these people, to being a judge where you're kind of sequestered from society.
Right.
You can't really.
But there's no reason why you have to stop your involvement with the community.
Well, I don't know if you listen to Danny Alvarez or know Danny Alvarez.
I did.
Danny Alvarez is a crazy person, and I mean that.
He's got a lot of energy.
He's got so much energy.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to still do a podcast, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to, he's another one. He's a male version of you.
Of me. I know.
Don't touch the ground, but
right.
Miriam Velez, Judge Velez?
Judge Valkenburg.
Valkenburg. So,
yes, so she's a mentor of mine. She's actually one of my role models.
So you remind me a lot of her. She and I went to Stetson together at the same time, and I'm friends with Jason. We all studied in the library, and even I feel like she was in the DEA, or she had some.
She has law enforcement experience as well. She was a probation officer and went to, I think, the DEA training facility or something like that.
Too. I don't know if you know Charles Arline. Do you know?
No.
Bald guy, very colorful personality,
okay.
about my age.
Yeah.
She comes to the courtroom anyway.
She's a firecracker too. I mean,
well, she is.
That's what happens with us, Hispanic females. We're little, but we can throw it down.
That's right. So anyway, so with the county court, that means that you can either do county criminal, traffic. County can sit on the DVI, can't they? Or am I wrong about that?
The DV court, the county, they have a county. I think that's where Judge Taylor is at right now. Is county court domestic violence trial division.
No, but I meant injunctions.
Oh yes. I think Judge Weiss did that for a little bit as well.
Right, and then you can also do county civil.
Right.
So I guess the small claims and all that other kind of stuff. Are there any other ones that I'm missing?
No, that's it. You got it. Yeah.
So, that's interesting. I when my wife was still practicing regularly, I was always pushing her. I was like, you got to run, because Basiglio, which is her maiden name, are, everywhere in Brandon, Plant City. Again, Latino, Italian, which the big community, like half of, Frank Gomez, Palomino, Dominguez, all these.
All those powerhouse names.
Well, they're all cousins of hers
right.
too. So it's funny. I always joke, 50% of my clients, not that they're all criminals or anything, but is family or cousins or whatever. And Sheridan doesn't get you anything in Tampa, Florida. If you went to Boston or New York, it might have some pull, but down here. But the Basiglio does it. But I wanted her to run for judge, and I was like, county court is where it's at, because circuit court. Divorces are just, it's such a grind on your soul. And then in criminal, you got these death penalty cases, these violent felons,
right.
or these corporate, in circuit civil, big, you're just playing with big chips.
So county court, you get the opportunity, I think.
It's important, and you're making a difference.
Right, to really make an impact. And you come across people who are maybe entering the justice system or coming to court for the first time.
For sure.
So, and then, you also have your cases where, remember, you've got some cases that are downgraded from felonies to misdemeanors because you have uncooperative victims or witnesses. Some of my most egregious cases that I prosecuted as a prosecutor were county court cases that were just downgraded from felonies to misdemeanors. So, I mean, you can't let that, just because it's a small natured crime, slip through the cracks.
Well, most criminal arrests, I think, got to be DUIs or drug charges, and most times, unless it's a significant amount of drugs or there's a fatality or serious bodily injury, those are going through the county court system.
Correct.
So, and I know, at least with Andrew Warren, the process for DUIs has changed a lot with the rider program.
Right.
I know that they're looking. I don't know if he's looking at it, but I've heard some talk of decriminalizing, or at least not charge. There was some treatment of marijuana charges that they were going to kind of change a little bit, and if that hasn't happened yet, it's coming. But so yeah, I mean, lots happening in the county court space. So in talking to some of the other people that are running, I've kind of gone through what my view is of the bench. You know, they always have these view from the bench luncheons where you get to come in and have judges talk about what they see attorneys do. I don't know how often they have a view from in front of the bench luncheons, but you know, I've said it a million times. The biggest thing for me is temperament.
Right.
Temperament, temperament, temperament. I don't care if you don't know the law. I don't care if you're late. I don't care anything else.
Yep.
This is such a difficult job.
Right.
Such a difficult experience for civilians going through the system,
Absolutely.
no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's usually, while it may not always be life or death, to the people it feels like life or death. And you know, people ask me about being an attorney, and I said, I don't think anybody prior to me becoming an attorney ever questioned my ethics, my morals, or my integrity. And it is questioned on an hourly basis now in this profession. And you find yourself oftentimes, your client doesn't trust you because they think you're trying to take their money.
Right.
The other party hates you because you're representing their spouse or whatever.
Right.
If it's a state attorney, their job is to not distrust you, but kind of hold you to a certain, you know, standard. If it's a civil matter, the other attorney's fighting with you, and then the judges are up there. And if you have a judge who's just ornery or angry, you know, and they're humans, and I get that, but
you can't be angry on the bench.
Well,
you can't
I just
be
see some of these judges, and I've talked about it so many times, but it's so important to me. I'll say it again, like, know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And I hope, and you've had the experience with a bunch of judges and been a prosecutor, so you've been in a courtroom a bunch, so I expect that you have, but it's not an easy job, and it's not necessarily a fun job.
Right.
And it's not, you know, so if you're going to be in there, hopefully you like it, but if you don't take it out on the attorneys. Don't take it out on the people in your courtroom.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been in front of a few judges that are exactly as you described. I mean, they're not, at least they don't seem happy to be there. And you walk in, and no matter which side you're on or who you're representing, you're going to get yelled at, which is never pleasant for anybody to experience. You know, I think I definitely agree with you. I think that you have to have the appropriate temperament. It needs to be professional. It needs to be civil. It needs to be humane. Yeah, I mean, I think people are coming in. Sometimes it's their first time. Sometimes it's their 20th time. Either way, they need to be treated with respect, and that courtroom is sacred. I mean, a lot of judges keep like a little plaque that says, you know, civility is to be expected.
Sure.
Well, it's to be expected from the bench
Both,
as well.
face both ways.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, yes, I've had the opportunity to practice in front of many of our current sitting judges, county and circuit. Some of them have retired, and most of them are really great. Most of them have the right temperament. There are some areas that, you know, I think I would like to improve upon or bring something different. You know, one of the things I often hear is, "Oh my God, you look so young," and I do have a young looking face. But the thing about that is that you're going to get somebody who has a very unique perspective. Think about the educators that you know in your life. Think about the first responders and law enforcement that you have in your life. I'm going to be bringing a perspective of all three of those backgrounds and professions: a teacher, a prosecutor, and a law enforcement officer. And those are opportunities that I've had to come in contact with just the general public, and I think those experiences are not going to be forgotten or lost on me, and it's going to translate, I think, fantastic on the bench. And I really hope to be the judge that doesn't stop serving once I get off that bench. I expect, that is an expectation of mine, that I continue my service off the bench. I will not stop being involved with the boards or the organizations that I'm a part of. I hope to engage the community. There's one time I was in PP court.
Preliminary appearance court, for
Yes.
those of you who don't know what PP court
Right,
is.
thank you. And Judge Leffler was on the bench, and we both have spoken how great he is. Do you know that we had a juvenile child come in? He absconded, wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. Judge Leffler had the principal's phone number on his phone and called him right there from the bench. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That judge is so in tune with the community
Right.
that he has the principal's phone number on speed dial.
Right.
That's the kind of judge I want to be.
Well, and that's amazing. And if Judge Leffler is a hero of yours, then that's that's a good mark for me. Let me ask you this, not because I'm concerned with it by you, but I know it's something that comes up when people are running who have, substantially a prosecutorial or a law enforcement background. Because you're going to have to be in a situation where you're judging the veracity of testimony from a police officer versus a civilian. And so I know that sometimes there's a concern that if someone had only occupied the prosecution space or only occupied the defense space, that they may be
one-sided,
more, inclined to kind of go that way in the rulings.
Sure.
I imagine you've thought about that and have an answer, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on that.
Absolutely. So the time that I've been with the state attorney's office, and I explained to you all the different areas and capacities that I served, what's nice about Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office is that we are not micromanaged. We are expected to do the right thing above all else. And it's not about the statistics of what's your prosecution rate, what's your rate of guilty verdicts. It's about doing the right thing and finding truth and justice. So there have been many times as a prosecutor where I get something that comes across my desk and it's not, I don't believe in it. I don't think that we should file the case. And I'll review it with my chief. I'll review it with my deputy chief. And we come to the conclusion that this is not something that either should be filed or should have been filed, and we drop the case.
Right.
And there's never any pushback on that because, I can't speak.
Obviously, you never worked for Pinellas County State.
I was not in Pinellas.
It's a different story over there.
Yeah, so, but, I can speak for Hillsborough County, and I can tell you that the prosecutors working there, I think, in my opinion, for the most part, do their very best to go through those cases, fairly and impartially. And if it's not a case that they believe in, then they do, hopefully, what I did and go to their chief, their deputy chief, and, you just end up not filing or dismissing the case.
Right.
Or no processing or dropping it. And, you can speak to defense attorneys who've worked with me, and they know that. They know when I was working there, they were able to come into my office, sit down, talk to me, and say, Monique, this is the problem with this case. And there have been cases where I have null prossed,
right,
because it's not there. And the same thing with law enforcement. I mean, look, where we're at today, I think law enforcement, including prosecutors, are under a microscope, and probably rightfully so. Because it's a lot of power, right? But the thing is, too, I mean, law enforcement makes mistakes. And when they make mistakes, they have a huge impact. They are not, we can't just be like, oh, they're humans, they make mistakes. No, they're humans who do make mistakes, but their mistakes have an impact on other humans. So I'm not ignorant to the fact that, yeah, I do have that experience strongly with law enforcement and prosecution, but I think that if you speak to other attorneys who've worked with me, other judges, I don't see things black and white. There are so many shades of gray. And from the bench, I think you need to have that humanity in mind and look at the individual not as just a number or another person cycling through the system, but you need to look at them as a human, and that's what I expect of myself.
Well, before we wrap up, where can people find your campaign online? Where can people find your firm page online? How do people find you? Social media?
Sure. Yeah, so we've got a website, and it's the website is Scott, the number four, judge.com. And then we're on Facebook as well. Facebook is Monique Scott for County Court Judge. And then on Instagram and Twitter. If you go to the website has all the links to all the social media platforms. Cell phone number is 813-758-4834. I'm making that public. Anybody can call me or text me at any point. Law firm, again, is Frankie Law. They can get in touch with me there at that office. And yeah, I mean, I'm available for any sort of questions or anything that's needed of the community because, as I said, I want to make sure I keep in touch with that aspect.
Well, you've had such good stuff to talk about today and say. Is there any closing remarks or anything else that you want to get out that we didn't touch on before we wrap up?
No, I think we did a good job.
I think we covered all the bases.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by today. It was nice to meet you in person. It's great that I've gotten to have the ability to do this with a lot of the people in your position because it just gives me such an insight to who's running. I don't know if this was your experience as a prosecutor, but all of your family or anybody that lives locally, when it's time to vote for judge, they always text you, who should I vote for? Who should I vote for? And, what I have found at times or have heard from people running is oftentimes if people don't know who the candidates are, there's a propensity to vote for the female candidate, which I heard is something. Interestingly, in this situation with four of you, two of you female, two of you men, I'll be interested to see how that kind of shakes out. But I wish you the best of luck. If there's anything I can do, I make the same offer to everybody that comes on. We're a highly trafficked area here on Tampa Street, so whenever it's time to put up signs, you're welcome to wave flags, that sort of thing. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Take care.
All right.